What's happening, Hardscapers? This is episode 19 of the How to Hardscape Podcast, where we talk to you about how you can start and grow your hardscaping business. This week, we are joined by Marty Grunder of Grunder Landscaping in the Grow Group, where he helps green industry professionals with their businesses, and he's here to talk with us about pre-qualifying leads, and has a lot of useful advice throughout this episode to share with us and yourself, so be sure to listen to the end. Now, we have another episode recorded with Marty about what you need to know about the first consultation with a customer. We're going to do something a little bit different this week. This week, if we get 10 people screenshotting this episode and sharing it, tagging How to Hardscape and @GrowGroup_, we're going to release this episode immediately with Marty talking about the first consultation. So you'll get back-to-back episodes this week if we get 10 people sharing this in their Instagram stories. And check out Marty's event for landscaping professionals called Grow. It's hosted by the Grow Group and Marty Grunder himself on February 24th to the 26th in Charlotte, North Carolina. And learn more about that at growgroupinc.com. And without further ado, here's our interview with Marty Grunder. Today we are joined by Marty Grunder. He is the founder and president of Grunder Landscaping and the Grow Group, where he helps green industry professionals grow their businesses. Hello, Marty, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mike. Glad to be here.
Marty, let's just get a chance to kind of fill in our audience more about yourself and your background in this industry.
Well, I've been doing it a long time, which means a couple things. I guess I'm successful, but maybe more importantly, I'm old. I started Grunder Landscaping Company as a way to make money to go to college in 1986 with a used $25 used lawnmower we bought at a garage sale, and we've turned it into one of the Midwest's most successful landscaping companies. We're in Southwest Ohio. I'm based in Dayton, which is about an hour north of Cincinnati. We have approximately 50 people on our team, and we're about a $5.5 million a year company. And then I also, about 20 years ago, started speaking and teaching professionally across the country, and that evolved into our consultancy, which is the Grow Group. The Grow Group has 7 team members, and we predominantly work with the owners and leadership teams of landscaping and hardscaping companies all across the country.
Marty, I brought you on today to talk first about pre-qualifying leads. And in that sense that, when I first started my landscaping construction business, I was not pre-qualifying leads, and I was running around everywhere I could go. Whenever I got these leads, I wasted a lot of time. So, Marty, why should we be pre-qualifying leads?
Well, there's a lot of reasons that you should be doing it. I think number one, Michael, when we work with landscaping companies in our consultancy, there's 2 things right off the get-go that we focus on. The first one and foremost, critical to a strategy, and keep in mind that structure always follows strategy. So you don't go out and have pavers delivered and all sorts of other hardscape materials to a job site and then try to figure out design. What do? You put the design in place first, the structure, and then you go and execute a strategy to get the job done. Well, business success, there's a parallel there. And so one of the things that we absolutely, dial in with our clients are, who is your ideal client? And your ideal client is the intersection predominantly of those who you enjoy doing business with, make money off of, and are sustainable. Sustainable, in other words, they're clients that you can build a business off of. So we know that you have to find an ideal client to make your business work. Those contractors that try to play in the low cost, low bid, high quality, high service arena, that doesn't work. That's not sustainable. You got to pick a lane. It's got to be quality, service, price. Sometimes you can partake in 2 of them. It's very, very rare that you can succeed in all 3 in business. So finding your ideal client is critical. And then once we help them find their ideal client, finding their ideal team member to serve that ideal client, those are 2 foundational principles that we teach in the Grow Group and that we help contractors. So in terms of screening, if you know who your ideal client is, that is why the screening process becomes so important. Contractors need to be spending their time, money, and effort with the customers that are best aligned with their ideal client profile to greatly improve their chances for making money and having a viable business. There's a lot to unpack there, but that's the basics of it, and hopefully that makes sense to your listeners.
Absolutely, it does. Now, How about when we are pre-qualifying these customers? So like you said, you've kind of created a basis of what your ideal customer is. Do you have different methods that you recommend businesses pre-qualify their customers, different methods?
Yeah, so there's several ways to do that. The first thing I would say is that, Michael, what would you think if I told you that you should be closing 100% of the sales calls you'd go on? What would you think just initially if I told you that? Would you think that's a little bit outrageous?
I would think absolutely that's a bit outrageous.
Yeah. I heard a sales trainer tell me that about 10 years ago. And when he said that, I crossed my arms, I sat back in my chair and I said, this guy's an idiot. What is he talking about? You should close 100% of the calls you go on. He has no idea what this business is all about. After about 2 hours of listening to him, I saw what he was getting at, and I have to admit I agreed with him. His premise was the better you learn how to screen, you should be able to close a very, very high percentage, if not 100% of the sales calls that you go on. Now, we look for, with our clients we work with in our consultancy, we look to see them closing at a minimum of 45% closing ratio. So we're still way away from 100. But the goal to get to 100, the takeaway from that, Michael, is that you are becoming so good at where your business's sweet spot is. You know that you know what questions to ask of the prospect to see a company doing business. Years ago, when I got my business started, whoever called me, I was just very quick to go out and meet them. And I can't tell you how many of those leads were just completely dead. Wrong neighborhoods. Somebody had $200 to spend. I mean, we've all been there. So pre-qualifying and screening your calls becomes an important part of an effective selling strategy. There's several questions we ask, and let me touch on some of the things in the screening process that I think are critical. First of all, their name and address. When we are screening people, we're asking them for their name and address, and we're actually going to Google their home and see where it is. Is it in the area that we can effectively serve? Is it in a neighborhood that we have other clients in? Is it in a neighborhood that there's a good probability we could sell them a job? If the jobs that are our sweet spots are patios that are 400 square feet or higher, we like doing fireplaces, lifestyles, and this is a home in a low-income area and it's somebody kicking tires, you probably got to be aware there and ask more questions. But trying to screen them and finding them out. So where are they? And then one of the immediate questions is, tell us, Michael, where you heard about Grunder Landscaping Company. Now let me ask you a question. If they say, I found you on the web, how does that stand versus if they said, oh, we know a lot about you. You've done a lot of jobs in our neighborhood. Which lead, the one they found you on the web or the one that says they've seen you working in their neighborhood, which one would you think is a better prospect?
Definitely the one that has seen you around, or the word of mouth for sure.
Why? Why do you think that? What have you found in your own business?
In my own business, I find that if somebody refers me, or if they've seen me around and they've obviously seen the quality of my work, that they're more comfortable with going ahead with me, whereas the person that I get from the web, it may be more of a tire kicker.
Right, exactly. And I've sold millions of dollars worth of work to people that found us on the web. So I'm not here to tell you that that's bad, but it's a lot easier to sell someone that has some degree of familiarity with your company. When I started and I was 16, 17, 18 years old, no one knew who I was. I didn't get people calling up saying, we've seen your work, I saw your trucks, my wife works with your wife. I mean, all my stuff was scratch, claw, knock on doors, put up job site signs, things we still do today. But now a great degree of our work comes, where'd you hear about us? Oh my gosh, well, where didn't we hear about you? So it's a little different, but you got to start someplace. So for probably what is the lane that most of your listeners are listening into, that's why quality work becomes so important. Referrals are a backbone to any successful business. You take a restaurant, you take a clothing store, you take a car dealership, you look at with the proliferation of the internet and online reviews. I mean, someone can literally kill you with a review if you don't do a good job. So you're absolutely right on what you described there. Other questions that we like to ask, you talked about, is it over the web? Is it email? We screen all of our leads on the phone. We've got to talk to them on the phone. We want them to hear us. We want to hear them. We want to spend some time with them. What we have found through the years at Grunder Landscaping Company, and then in the literally hundreds and hundreds of landscaping companies that we teach sales to on an ongoing basis, get on the phone. Now, from a kind of a simplistic perspective, when they're talking to you, who can't they be talking to? Your competition. And understand, foundationally speaking, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. And that's a process. And it's pretty hard to develop an online relationship with someone by doing emails back and forth. So we got to have a phone number. We got to talk to you, and we're going to ask you questions. And then some other questions we'll ask is, what prompted you to decide to go forward with this project? Have you ever worked with a professional landscaper in the past? If they say no, that can be good. It can be bad, but it certainly helps us prepare ourselves for the mindset of the prospect that we're about to embark on this call with. We'll ask them to tell us the process they're going to go through in selecting a contractor. That's important. If someone says, well, my husband teaches statistics at the local university, and I'm going to get 27 quotes, and we're going to put them through an algorithm to see which one is the best fit for us, that's probably not a good lead. When someone says to you, when you ask a question like that, what's the process you're going to go through in selecting a contractor? Well, we're not going to go with the cheapest price. We're going to go with the best contractor that has the best idea for our backyard. When you're talking with people like that, the more you talk to them, the more intimate that the conversation can become around details that can actually show you signals on how to sell that job. Now, I'm throwing a lot at you, but the main premise is find out where they heard about you and then ask them questions that really try to find out the motivation for this job. Let's say, for example, they say their daughter's getting married in 3 months. Well, your sense of urgency on trying to make a sale was just created. Boom. And why would you think that would be if they told you their daughter was getting married in 3 months?
Well, they want their project wrapped up before then.
Yeah. And if they're calling you in April, good luck finding a good hardscaping contractor that can do that job in 90 days. Mm-hmm. You may have just found the leverage point that you need to sell the job. So having a discussion with them on the phone. We do have web requests. We do get emails, but we always go to, can we please have a telephone number and let's get in the conversation with you. We have never been told no to that. Never. Now, we do have a lot of high net worth individuals that we work with. They text a lot. They email. We ask them up front, what's the best way to communicate with you? But I don't know about you, Michael. I don't want to give my cell phone number to a guy at the car dealership that I'm trying to figure out if I want to buy a new Yukon from him. I'd rather talk to him on the phone. I'd rather be a little bit incognito in that way, ask some more questions before we get into me giving you my cell phone number and everything else to have that kind of conversation. Not to say if they give you your number, you didn't get their cell phone, but we really want to talk to them on the phone and let them hear us, hear our passion, tell them to pull up our website while we're on the phone. And we're trying to get them to see that what we have to offer is most likely better than what they've come across so far. I think the last point I would make is that, when I started my business, the internet wasn't even around. I mean, there weren't iPads or anything like that. It doesn't matter if you're a startup or a $60 million a year landscape contractor. All of those kinds of companies can look the same on the web and handle the calls and everything else the same. So for your listeners that are small or getting started in the business, don't be intimidated by that. Your web presence and how you conduct yourself in this part can be every bit as good as a huge, enormously successful company.
Absolutely. And just some amazing information there and a lot of different questions that you can get into with your clients when you're pre-qualifying them. Now, Marty, with all those questions that we can ask them, is there anything that we should definitely not ask them? And the first thing that comes to mind quickly for me is budget. Should we be asking these clients about a budget, or is this kind of, getting started with them, kind of feeling them out before you get into that money aspect of it?
Well, you got to be careful with budget. If you lead with that, your motive for what you're doing, you kind of come across as having what we call commission breath. You're just in it to get the sale. So you do have to be careful with that. But we also want to try to figure out if this is a fit. Now, this is going to scare some of your contractors listening, but we don't do free estimates. We don't go out and just do an estimate if you call in. There's a $100 consultation fee for one of our professionals to come see you. So there's a whole process we go through that. But So we have to know, what are you looking to spend? We also have a minimum job of $2,000. So if it's $1,000, we're not going to go out there. Now, that does prohibit us from having further discussions with people. But when I led off this podcast, Michael, I told you about the importance of knowing who your ideal client is. We know that our ideal client is not someone spending $800. The way our company is set up, we can't go out and do a project for less than $2,000 and have it make money. That's about one day's worth of work for one of our crews. So when you know that, you've got to get the budget. Now, the problem or the challenge becomes, how do you get the budget? And so here's how you do it. So you're talking about doing a new patio, Mrs. Jones. Yes, that's right. And how many people are normally going to be seated on the patio? Well, we have 4 people in our family, but we like to have family members over. At times there's 12. Okay, that makes sense. In terms of a patio, in terms of a size, you're going to want to be somewhere in the 400 to 700 square foot range for a patio to allow your family of 4 to enjoy it most of the time. But when you swell up to 12 people or so on that patio, maybe you're having a party, 700 would make that more comfortable. Generally speaking, our prices range per square foot on a patio anywhere from $15 to $30 a square foot. Now that's a big range. The range depends upon how accessible is your backyard. Are there retaining walls that we need to do? What materials do you select? Is there any demolition that we have to do prior to this? So there's a huge range that goes there. But I can tell you a 400 square foot patio is the smallest patio you would want. And about $20 a square foot, generally speaking, will do a really, really nice job. So we are probably talking about somewhere in the $8,000 range to get into the backyard, do the patio, rehab the lawn, put it in there. That's just a ballpark figure. But $8,000 is a fair thing for us to start a conversation with. And then you ask them, how does that fit with what you were thinking about investing in your backyard? Well, if they say, oh my gosh, we were thinking like maybe $600, maybe $800, well, you just saved yourself a whole lot of grief and work that can be spent to someone else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of just brought up something really quick, because you mentioned something really interesting about your business, if you don't mind getting into very quickly, is that you know that your business does not do a project under 2,000. For some of our listeners, how do you recognize what your business, what that number is for your business?
Well, look, when I was in my 20s and I was at the University of Dayton pursuing a degree in business, and I was growing my business, I took some accounting classes and I started to understand how to make money. And so when I was a $400,000 a year company back in 1990, we didn't have a minimum job. I did everything. I didn't have the overhead and the structure that I have today, but I always knew my costs. And, that numbers is something that's intimidating to a lot of contractors, but you have to know your number. Amazon, where would Amazon be right now, Michael, if they didn't know their numbers?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You look at any successful business in any town of any contractor that's listening to this podcast right now, and I guarantee you much of their success is centered around their complete, intimate understanding of the numbers. How do I make money? Where do I make money? What are my expenses? What are the dangers associated with this project that it could go sideways and I could lose money? So, we know through an analysis that our minimum job is $2,000. Now, if one of our client calls and says, hey, I want you to add just a little 4x6 area off my patio for my grill. Now that I see what this is, I kind of wish we would have done something like that. What would that be? We don't tell them, well, we have a $2,000 minimum. That we might be able to do for $300 or $400 because they're already a client. So you got to be smart about this. But, when you look at all the money, Michael, that goes into mobilizing for a hardscape job, none of that's cheap. When we pull up for a hardscape job, between the truck, the trailer, the machines, the saws, the laser level, the supervisor's truck that comes out to guide them, all that. We might have $250,000 worth of material on a job. Even your new contractors, if they're renting a machine or any of that, it's pretty quickly you can pile up a lot of expenses. So you got to know your numbers.
Absolutely. And it's something that we're trying to help contractors out with on this podcast and through our website with different resources available to them. But I mean, there's amazing software out there like LMN that they can implement into their business. And we've had Mark Bradley from LMN on the podcast to talk more about that. Just some awesome things out there. And you can be the best craftsman in the world, but if you don't know your numbers, it's not going to be a long run in business.
Mark Bradley's got a wonderful product there. We have a lot of our clients using it, and we don't hear any bad things about that software. I think for small contractors, that product is a fantastic option that they should be looking at and considering, because it'll do just what we talked about, Michael. It'll teach you how to know your numbers. And when you know your numbers, you can be very empowered and make great decisions. You know, there's something we teach our clients. I learned it in business school, and then I've been teaching it. Good managers make good decisions with good information.
Absolutely. And we got off on a little bit of a side tangent there, but now I'm thinking about Mark Bradley here. Marty, is there anything else that we should not be asking our clients in that first pre-qualifying stage?
I don't know about shouldn't. I think you have to, as best you can, put yourself in your client's shoes. You know, for contractors listening, knowing what you know about the industry, consider someone was calling on your mother. What would you want them to say, not say? How would you see that experience going? And then judge that ultimate experience with how you're doing. I think you do have to be careful too early in the conversation bringing up budget. That's a conversation that you have once you learn a little bit more about what they're doing. Time frame is a very important part of what you're trying to figure out with this as well. If you talk to somebody and they want the patio done in a week, that's not going to work. So time frame is another very important thing, because like I mentioned there a couple minutes ago, if they say they've got a wedding coming up, well, there's your sense of urgency you can create to try to close the job. So I'd say time frame. The rest of it, I think we've touched on.
Absolutely. And kind of wrapping this up, is there anything else that we haven't discussed on this podcast that you feel would be valuable to our audience in terms of pre-qualifying these leads that are coming in?
You know, the only thing I would say, Michael, is do great work. You know, do awesome work. That is the easiest thing any contractor can do to grow their business, is to do quality work. When you do quality work, people tell other people about it. It stands out when people have others over to their house or their place of business. I can't stress that enough. We don't do real well in the consulting arena when we go in to work with a client and they don't do good work. So we do some screening before. We check out what kind of contractor is this. If quality work is not something that they do, if they don't have good hardscaping skills, that's really hard for us to help them grow. You've got to be able to do the work the right way.
Marty, where can our audience find you online, find out more about you and anything that you've got going on?
So you can find us we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, at Grow Group. And you'll find us if you just Google the Grow Group or go on any of those social media platforms, you can find us. And then on the web at growgroupinc.com. We have a fantastic event February 24th, 25th, and 26th in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's our annual educational event. It's called Grow. It's our 25th year of doing this event. We'll have close to 500 success-minded landscaping companies. We're going to tour the fastest growing landscaping company in America. Loving is the name of their company. We've got a star-studded cast of speakers. This is an event put on by landscape pros for landscape pros. As the owner and operator of one of the Midwest's most successful landscaping companies, I know exactly what contractors need to learn, and this event is a holistic approach to improving your landscaping company. 3 days. We're going to take over Charlotte. We're going to have a lot of fun. Hopefully your listeners will come see us.
Amazing. And then where can we go to find out more about that event?
If you go to growgroupinc.com, it's all over the web. There's a huge spread on it. There's an agenda, and you can call our office. Any one of our team in the office would be happy to talk to you about it. You can also reach out to us on social media platforms, and we can help with any question you might have.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast episode. Visit us at howtohardscape.com for more information on this subject, and let us know what you want to learn about in future episodes by just reaching out to us on our social channels. We're at howtohardscape everywhere, or contact at howtohardscape.com by email. We'd love to know what you thought of this episode, or just go on over to your favorite podcasting app, Subscribe to us, leave us a review, give us a rating. Again, this really helps us get up there in the ratings to help us attract more guests onto the show, to help share with you their stories, their experiences in the hardscaping industry. We look forward to meeting with you next week on the How to Hardscape podcast.